the cave number 10 is the most important and all of that, but it's not true. And you will quickly understand why it's not true, because each of these 24 caves in this cave complex are so unique. Hello and welcome to this next episode of Giggly Magazine podcast. And this week I am taking you to an relatively unknown place in India, the Pandavleni Caves. Now, what are the Pandavleni? The Pandavleni are situated in Nashik. Nashik is a town in Maharashtra, and these caves are literally located as just as you enter Nashik, and they are on a hill. So that the hills are called Trirashmi Hills. And the most fascinating thing that I thought about these caves are that they're located from east to west. So people suggest, if you just Google them, people have suggested that you should visit these caves in the morning or the evening because the sunlight plays with them so beautifully. Let me tell you that visiting the Pandavleni caves in the afternoon 1 o'clock in summer was not a good choice on my part because it was 40 degrees Celsius and it was very hot. But you can take your car up to the base of the caves, and there's a 15-minute walk up. It's a very easy trek, if you can call it a trek, because they have made staircases which lead up, and they are new staircases, so it's easy to climb up. What I also wanted to mention was that it's a 15 minutes climb and it's a beautiful climb. Even if you go in summer, it's having a lot of foliage, so even if the trees have little leaves on them, they cover you up pretty well, and through the trees you can see a bit of the city of Nashik below you, and you can see the highway that enters into Nashik. So it's a beautiful sight to see. You can just have a panoramic view of Nashik on one side and the hills through which the highway comes forth on the other side. As you climb up, there are boards which tell you a bit about what the Pandavleni caves are, but they are lying pretty much in neglect when I went, but they have some really interesting information. And when you go up, there's a ticket booth. For Indians it's 15 rupees and for foreigners it is 200 rupees, which kind of seems unfair, but come on, exchange rates. Anyway, so when your tickets are scanned, you get in, and there's a cave number 10 in front of you, and there's a board next to you. The board has a lot of information. If you Google Pandavleni caves, people will tell you that the cave number 10 is the most important and all of that, but it's not true. And you will quickly understand why it's not true, because each of these 24 caves in this cave complex are so unique. Before we begin, let me first tell you why we call these caves Pandavleni. Now, first of all, Pandavleni are two different words. Pandav is the name, Leni means caves. Okay, so it's really not correct to call Pandavleni caves that way, because Pandavleni itself means Pandav caves. So what about this word Pandav? Does it refer to the Pandav brothers in Hindu scriptures? Well, it doesn't. Pandav actually comes from a Buddhist word, and or sort of a word that is used to talk about these Buddhist monks. So these Buddhist monks 2000 years ago wore the same uniform that you find on Buddhist monks even today. The yellow ochre color that they wear is what you could say is the origin of the word Pandav. So I looked into a Pali English dictionary, and according to this dictionary, this yellow ochre color is called Pandhara or Pandu, and this word stuck, and the caves are called Pandu caves. And I think either it was because of like a Chinese whisper they became Pandavleni, or Pandu is not really a very it's actually literally means foolish in Marathi, so it's probably that it was changed to Pandavleni, and Pandavleni has stuck It's what the archaeological survey even calls these caves today. So they're the Pandav Caves. You can pretty much understand these 24 caves are all Buddhist caves. And the most revolutionary thing is that these were built by the Hinayana clan when this area was ruled over by the Satavahanas. And the Satavahan empire was a Jain empire. So they were Jain rulers, and they were pretty tolerant towards Buddhists and Buddhist monks, because these caves are not financed. So because Buddhist monks do not have a lot of money, they need to be financed. So they were financed not just by the ruler or the empire, but you will find the wife or the family of a commander or a warrior serving under King Satkarni's army. They have donated money. You'll find a merchant, a farmer, a commoner, a pious human being, even a writer who has contributed money to build these caves. So you have people from all walks of life, right from royalty, which is a king's wife, the queen, as well as a merchant and a farmer who has donated to these caves. That's so beautiful and talks a lot about what religious beliefs were 2000 years ago around the area of Nashik, at least. Because these caves are 2000 years old, they're as old as the Karla caves in Lonavala. Lonavala is again 4 hours from Nashik, and these caves were excavated in the 1st century. And the first thing that you'll notice is that the exteriors of these different caves are so beautifully done. So there are two types of caves, especially that those ones designed by the Hinayana clan. So there is a Chaitya Griha and there's a Vihara. So in the Chaitya Griha is where you would actually pray and you would meditate. And in the Vihara, you'd have Buddhist monks stay there. So they'd stay in one place and pray in another. So these were the two different types of caves that you find in the cave complex at Pandavleni as well. And all of these caves, except for the viharas, especially the Chaitya Grihas, have such beautiful exteriors. And you won't find these exteriors even in the caves of Ajanta and Ellora, except probably for a few, because you'll have the stupa design or the design around the windows which would let the light in. But here you have a few caves which have something like the Sanchi stupa, but they are so very well decorated. It is not just around the doorway or the windows, but it's the entire structure that is built in a very beautiful manner. And other structures also have beautiful windows and columns, especially the capital of the column. The capital of a column is the top part where the column joins the frieze or the wall above. And these capitals have beautiful motifs. There are elephants, other animals, flowers done on the columns, and the columns have shape, they're symmetrical. So that's what the exteriors are. And there is no paint used. The Hinayana clan didn't believe in lot of embellishments. So if you enter the interiors of the caves, you will notice that they are so different from the exteriors. There is no carving almost. If you look at the floor or the ceiling, there's no huge flower motifs or frescoes as they were called. And the interiors are very peaceful, calm. And what I noticed was that the floors inside a few caves had fish designs, and these fish designs seemed to be drawn by a child, and I thought maybe they are new. But next to these fish designs was the game that looks like Ludos, and this game was called Panchisi. This Panchisi game you would actually have seen in paintings, sometimes played by royals. So it looks like Ludos. It has grid-like rectangles on 4 sides, and you have those small gemstones or something that they use to play, and they had dice. So this game was actually carved on in the floor, So which led me to believe that these motifs are probably old. Now the thing is, there is nobody to ask up here. There's literally no guides, no stalls. So if it's too hot, make sure that you take a bottle along with you, and please don't litter up there. Coming back to Pandavleni caves, there are a few memories that I have here about entering a cave and then just being blown away by the statues. So there are Buddhist statues here, and they are huge. So one cave I entered into, it was like it was very hot outside. It was bright. It was, as I said, it was afternoon, and I entered in. It took my eyes a while to adjust, and when I looked straight ahead, there was a Buddha idol sitting in the dark, and it took me a while to capture it on camera because it was pitch dark inside. And what I also noticed was sometimes in the exterior and sometimes in the interiors there are few carvings. So I think it is the Pali language written on tablets, uh, either onto the walls or tablets that have been carved out. And if you want the translation of what these mean, you have an entire Wikipedia article having translations from Pali to English, so you know what they have written. With that said, this is the general description about the exterior and interior of the Pandavleni caves. But there are a few things I want to talk to you about which I found very different here. As I said about the paintings and about the exterior and the interiors are very different from the normal caves that you probably find Rajanta and Ellora, which are very famous. What other thing that I found something to be very different is that a few of these caves have ditches in front of them. So you have to be very careful when you're entering because you think that, oh, that's a boulder, and on the other side there probably be a flat surface, but in fact they are ditches, and on the surface they seem to be smaller, and if you really look in, there seems to be a bigger sort of water tank inside, and you think they might be natural, but in fact these are man-made ditches, and it's meant to store water. Personally, I haven't seen such a system in any of the caves I have been to where you have water storage around the cave complex. So, this is, as I said, on the Rashmi hills, so it's not on a plain surface. So, they actually literally thought about building water tanks, probably because Nashik is a bit of arid land, so rainfall is not as abundant as in the Konkan region, and they have built ditches for probably for a bad monsoon when it doesn't rain, and these ditches are pretty huge. So even if there were few hundred monks living here, there'd be enough water for them throughout the year. That is what I found to be very striking and different at these caves. Another thing I found to be interesting is that these caves are not all located on the ground floor, if you could say. It's not like you're walking and you enter the caves on the same level. Some of these caves are located at a higher level where you need to access them via a staircase. That is something new I found out. So most of these caves which are located at a higher level have stairs, and these stairs were made by the Hinayana clan 2000 years ago. So some of them have either fallen away or now become just too difficult to actually climb up. So the Archaeological Survey of India has built new ladders to reach these caves. But some of these staircases are still used, and you can understand they have been made 2000 years ago because they're uneven. And these staircases don't just take you from the ground to the cave up above, they also are interconnecting the different caves. Some of these caves are connected by ladders, so you climb to one, the other, and then you come down. So that was another fascinating thing because most caves either are not connected or the tunnels connecting these caves have now been bridged over by the Archaeological Survey. So that was something very different that I figured I should let you know. Now I must tell you a few about the mentionable caves at the Pandavleni cave complex. So let me start with the oldest cave, which is cave number 18. It's a Chaitya Griha and it dates back to the 1st century. So it's a typical Buddhist cave. It has a nave, an aisle, and a covered passage behind it. I had to mention that because if you're going, you better visit the oldest cave. That leads us to the third cave. It's a very talked about cave here because it is the largest cave, and rightly so because it was donated by the Queen Mother. Her name was Gautami Balsari, and this cave is named after her and called Gautami Putra. And this cave has beautiful columns. And when you enter, it's a beautiful, and right in front of you is a Sanchi like stupa, but on either side of the statue is what you really need to look at, because this cave was a huge shock for me. It was astonishing to find these two motifs here. I'll give you 2 seconds to guess what motifs I might have found here. So here you go, think about it. On one side of the Gautama Buddha is the Ashok Chakra. The Ashok Chakra is the wheel that you will find today on India's national flag, the tricolor. The wheel with 24 spokes is the Ashok Chakra, and this Ashok Chakra is a part of these Pandavleni caves from 2000 years ago. This is phenomenal. Counted that there are not 24 spokes, there are about 16 or 19 spokes on it. But it is revolutionary to find it here because, and get this, the other motif on the other side is the national emblem of India. So the emblem that you find written above Satyameva Jayate, the four lions facing the four directions of north, south, east, and west. This is spectacular. I mean, who would have thought this to be possible? And these three lions, you can see only three lions at a time because they are facing opposite to each other. So you can see only three at a time. So there are three lions on one side and the Ashok Chakra on the other. That was something I was so astonished to see, and I just couldn't stop clicking pictures and just thinking about how in the world these two significant motifs come here at the Pandavleni caves. That was the cave number 3. Now, another cave that was astonishing was the cave number 14. And you need a ladder to access these caves. To get to the cave number 14, you climb up. And I think at a time only one person can fit in. That's how small these caves are. And when you get in, you just creeped out first and bombarded by the idols of the statues inside. So there are 3 little larger than life statues of Buddha right around you. So 2 on either side and 1 straight ahead. And they each have 2 devas above them. What are devas? They're angels in Buddhism. So these huge figures are so real, they might actually come to life. And it's a very small area, so it kind of gets a little scary. So that was the cave number 14. And if you have little time to visit, make sure you visit cave number 18, which is the oldest, cave number 3, which has those spectacular 2 motifs, and the third cave which you should go to is cave number 14. I like them all because 24 caves, 24 very different caves that you might have understood by what I've told you, donated by very different people with different architecture, different design, different things to explore inside. And it's a beautiful complex because, as I said, they're from east to west or west to east. And as you walk through, you can see a panoramic view around you because there is nothing around. There are no skyscrapers or anything to block your view. It's actually 8 kilometers away from the city center of Nashik. These were the really incredible Pandavleni. You must visit them if you're ever in Nashik. And that leads us to the quizzes. And this time I've made the quizzes a slightly difficult one. But let's try, okay? So, the first question you must know if you're a Harry Potter fan. What's the name of the viaduct used by the Harry Potter train? This viaduct is in Scotland. It's a famous viaduct, a very picturesque sight because the Harry Potter train, or what looks like the Hogwarts Express, runs through this viaduct. It's in Scotland. It's a very beautiful, scenic, I think, Gothic viaduct. Second, the Kailash Cave Temples belongs to which cave complex? Which cave complex does the Kailash Cave belong to? Third one, Which city houses the royal chapel of the Bourbon Orleans family that ruled over France? Which is a royal chapel? In one of the cities in France, which was a royal chapel for the Bourbon Orleans family in France. The fourth question: name Michelangelo's famous sculpture. So, what is his most famous sculpture? Even if you're not into sculptures or Renaissance art, you would know which statue was created by Michelangelo. And the last question, fifth question: due to what actually the Palace of Westminster burned down in the 19th century? Now, the reason for this is a very silly reason. So, if you remember, if you've read the article, because of what or which reason did the Palace of Westminster burn down in the 19th century? A huge loss because of these silly things. You can't really call them silly, they were important, but just name the thing. And I will talk to you about these things in a later video because for me it's very fascinating. That leads us to the last segment, something new I found out this week. And this week, I want to encourage you to take a heritage walk in your city. I have been doing that quite a lot since last year because I come from a city which is fairly new. It's barely 400 years old. That is fairly new for one of the oldest civilizations in the world, that is India. So this city that I come from, I used to believe is just an industrial hub. There is nothing going on here. And I just read about the history and I thought, okay, let's go for a heritage walk because I had nothing else to do. And that sort of enraptured me to think that, wow, there's been so much happening. There is so much of history that I'm passing through, living around every single day, but I have no clue about, and started exploring more. And I figured that there are so many people who don't go for a heritage walk in their own city and miss a lot of history that's happening around them. And in one such heritage walk, I found out that the city of Mumbai has the country's oldest business district. So today business districts and building these are very famous, but the oldest, and it's very picturesque even today, is the Hornivam Circle in Mumbai, and apparently the second business district to be built is the Ballard Estate. I have read about the Hornivam Circle being a business district in one of the museum exhibitions I had visited. And this, why it was built that way was because it had a town hall and a beautiful vista, almost a beautiful vista, you could say, because it had a lot of greenery, and they have maintained that greenery. They have built beautiful old, you could say, neoclassical architecture there, and a beautiful Infinite Circle. And the Hornivam Circle is actually named after a English journalist, one of the few or the only place to be named after a British post independence. So it was named after Hornivam, who was a journalist, and what he had done was he brought to light the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which took place on the 13th of April in 1919. So this massacre killed a lot of people at Jallianwala Bagh, and the British the British were behind it, and they tried to subdue this, and Hornivam was against it. He thought to do the right thing instead of sticking to his nationality, and he was very well respected for it by national leaders at that time. And this circle is named after this great British journalist, and he continued to talk about this. He continued to talk about the British Raj and the atrocities under it, even when he was deported back to England. So I read this article on Life History India, and it was pretty interesting. So if you want to read about him, just Google him. So that was about what it was for this week. I will see you next Friday with another amazing podcast. Until then, you can absorb more history by going on heritage walks or on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. There are many other podcasts you can listen to or watch previously. So have a great week ahead, an excellent weekend, and I will see you next Friday. Bye bye.